Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Gigi Smile. This is our discussion of the Testaments, episode 4. I have to say, this was my favorite episode of the season so far. I've loved them all, but this one was done a little differently in that it starts out very light, very visually peaceful, and but very quickly becomes very stress filled, and that tension just builds as the episode goes on. So the episode starts with preparations for the aunt's tea that's happening at the Mackenzie household later that day. But we hear Daisy narrating that Gilead is so beautiful, she sometimes forgets how scared she is, even just for a moment. And I feel that tension throughout the entire episode because immediately after we see a woman come out who we find out is a florist, also Mayday, and she tells Daisy that Garth must move her or get her out immediately because they are closing in. So that surprised me that one Mayday operative knew another Mayday operative. I'm wondering if Daisy knew that she was also Mayday. Uh, and it also makes me worried for Daisy because if these people are caught, are they going to rat out or be tortured and say that Daisy is Mayday? So we see their conversation come to an end because Hannah and the other girls are very close by, and that startles Daisy. As the entire group starts walking away, we can see the florist hiding on the side, inside her shop, but on the side. And as the walk continues, we, of course, run across some bodies that are hanging that represent Mayday operatives that have been retaliated against by Gilead. And of course, Daisy is shocked. She's stunned to see this. As usual, the girls are not affected by it because they have been taught to tolerate this violence and they have been taught that Mayday are the bad ones. And it really infuriates me because a lot of these girls are the girls that Handmaid's Tale tried to rescue when their pilots were shot down. But at any rate, I appreciate that it's Hannah that is very kind to Daisy and tells the other girls to go ahead, that she's going to stay with Daisy because she's not used to this. So the girls return to the Mackenzie household in preparation for the aunt's tea. Hannah dresses, and we see her securing her top undergarment, which does become important later in the episode. Hannah and Becca are in the room and they are discussing the steps for the waltz, which they have to dance in preparation for the commander's dance that's coming up. And Hannah takes a moment to show her friend how she really feels when she asks Becca, "Do I have to?" And you can see she really doesn't want to do this. Becca does explain to her that they are expected to also have an opening dance or an opening number. So it's these girls are basically on a pageant or on a catwalk trying to impress the commander that they feel is going to give them the most safety and security in their future. But as they start the waltz, we again pick up on the fact, or at least I did, that Becca is a queer character and is in love with her best friend, Hannah. Now, Hannah is not aware of this, but we see it. We also see Paula driving Daisy crazy, setting up the downstairs, making sure the flowers and everything is set up perfectly in preparation for the aunt's arrival. We also see Paula doing her usual duty of demeaning Hannah by her looks, trying to straighten up her posture, and t- saying to Penny, "Do you see what I'm dealing with?" And it's Penny who steps in to say, "Don't worry, I'll help Agnes. You go ahead and finish with your preparations." So we see a few of the girls with Penny examining the table with the bounties that the commanders have sent to Hannah before the dance. And they talk about the things that she's received, like she has tenderloin and oranges. And that reminded me of Fred Waterford when he used to brag about the Gilead oranges whenever he wanted to make a trade with Mexico or any other country. And Becca asks Penny if she can feel the baby kicking yet. And of course, it's too early, Hannah says. And we get Hulda make a comment about how she has never been this far along in a pregnancy. And she says it in a very childish manner, but also as if it's such a positive thing. She's trying to cheer her up, make her feel better that this pregnancy has lasted longer than any other. And she doesn't quite realize that it's hurting her friend's feelings. But now we do know that Penny has had multiple miscarriages. So while the girls are all outside greeting the aunts that have arrived for the tea, we see Daisy pretend to knock over one of the displays from the table. And that gives her an opportunity to speak with Garth alone, where she tells him that the florist almost got her caught and that she needs to get the heck out of Gilead, that she's too scared to stay. She wants to leave. And Garth shows a little bit of moxie, more moxie than I expected, when he says to her, what did you think this was going to be easy? This is a rebellion or a revolution. And he says, what about the time that we invested in you? He says, you need to give us something. You need to give us something that makes it worthwhile for us to get you out. And when she says, when am I leaving? And he says, I don't know. She's really upset. And but it surprised me that he seems to be a little smarter and a little more forceful than he appears in the beginning. So as everyone is outside waiting to greet the ants, it seems like it's the head of a state or the president of another country, the way that they are received. And you see all of the tight security, you see all the military, you see the helicopters, you see all of the beefed up security. And it kind of makes me wonder if Gilead is more scared of Mayday than they are letting on. They seem to be expecting a lot of pushback from Mayday. And I'm beginning to think that maybe Mayday is a little more organized than we saw with the bus situation. But we'll see. So at the tea, we see the Greens serving the tea to an aunt and their mothers. And I say that in quotes, mothers. And they are being judged on how they pour, on their form, on their ability to keep a smile, to maintain their composure. And I think that that is the real test, is how do these girls handle pressure as a commander's or a high commander's wife would have to do. I don't think it's necessarily about the tea, but I think it's more about how do they handle the stresses of being able to handle the running of the household, to maintaining the style and the beauty of Gilead in a way that makes the high commanders look good. So it's more about handling pressure. And we see Paula trip one of the girls. And I think she did that because she was doing very well, perhaps even better than Hannah in that situation. And she had to make things harder for her. She thinks that she did it on the sly, on the down low, but she didn't. People saw her. They know what she did to this girl. So when Daisy asks Hannah why this young lady's crying, and Hannah tells her that she spilled the tea, Daisy says, "Is that it?" Or something to that effect. But what bothered me is that she said it just as Aunt Estee was walking in. So I think Aunt Estee heard her say, "Is that it?" So I am a little worried that Estee may report that to someone, or it may come back to bite Daisy for minimizing what happens with the tea. So realizing how upset the girls are over the spilled tea, Daisy acknowledges that that facade they have is fake. That they are really feeling all of the pressure, and they are taught to hide their feelings, hide their emotions, hide their fears. And that gives her a little bit of a push to go and continue with her mission. So she sneaks into Mackenzie's office, looks in, and it's a beautiful office. It's empty. She takes the chance and does not realize that he is sitting in the corner. And it shocks her when he says, "What are you doing here? Can I help you? What are you doing here?" And but she keeps her cool as she normally does, and she mentions the chocolate and not having had any since Canada. So we see the chocolate that's on his desk, and I immediately had a PTSD flashback to Esther, and was afraid that something similar was going to happen to her, but it doesn't, thank goodness. Mackenzie, after a few moments, seems to believe what she's saying, and he picks up a chocolate and he says that he would bring these to Agnes when she was little. So Daisy tells Mackenzie that she's been paired with Agnes and what a wonderful girl Agnes is. And he says, yes, she's not little anymore. She's a very good girl. And he looks like a concerned dad. He looks like he's worried about his daughter. Like he really loves Hannah. But then he asks Daisy what I think a ridiculous question. And that is she happy? Is Agnes happy? He's asking that question even though he knows the answer. He knows the answer to that question. He's trying to make himself feel better about Hannah being a forced child bride and not having any choices in her life, that everything is already set for her. And he's asking that question from someone who is completely powerless in Gilead. Daisy can't say anything. She can't be honest. She's not going to say no, she's not happy. You know, she's a teenager that doesn't want to be forced into a marriage for the purposes of just bearing children. Agnes probably wants to read. She wants to have choices. She wants to date a boy she likes. Perhaps meet her real family that she was kidnapped from. No, sir, I do not think that Agnes is happy. But she can't say that, so she gives him the stock answer. And by his reaction, he knows that it's a standard answer. He realizes it, and he finally tells her to leave. He says thank you, gives her the chocolate, and sends her back to the party. Daisy heads back down to the tea, and the tea is reaching its end. where the commander's cake is being served to everyone by the Marthas. I noticed that the Marthas have also been extensively trained. They're doing like almost like a similar choreograph to what the Greens were doing earlier as they serve and move about the room. They move a certain way, they stand at certain places. And so they are also extensively trained and also under a tremendous amount of pressure. We hear Daisy say that whoever gets the slice of cake with the bride in it is expected to be the one that's married first. And of course, we are in the Mackenzie household. We know what Paula already did in terms of tripping the girl. So it's not a surprise to everyone that Hannah is the one that gets the bride in the cake. Unfortunately, when she bites into it and she either chips or damages her tooth in some way, and everyone is pretending to be concerned and sympathetic to what just happened, but the girls are competing, and there isn't really a lot of hiding it. They can try to hide it, but we see them competing, wanting to be the first one to get married because they may have the best chance of being able to have a better life going forward if they do. So arrangements are made to get Hannah to the dentist immediately so they can fix her tooth right away. It's just before the commander's dance. So Paula is starting to freak out. And once at the dentist, Daisy notices that Hannah is very tense, but she just assumes that she just hates dentists like a lot of people do, right? So once she is in the office, in the dentist office with him alone, we realize that Hannah doesn't trust him anymore. She knows what he is, and she doesn't even pretend. She just keeps an eye on him. She refuses to look away from him. She looks at him as if she's saying, I know who you are, I know what you do. And she doesn't hide that. But he tells her he's got to work on her. He gives her gas and he puts her to sleep. Outside, Daisy has a few minutes alone with Garth as they're waiting for Hannah to finish with her appointment. She gives him the chocolate. She has to point out to him that it is Japanese chocolate, which, according to Garth, they have sanctions with. And she also tells Garth that Hannah has fallen in love with him, and he is pretty shocked about that. When Hannah and Daisy arrive back at the Mackenzies, we see Paula standing outside, pacing back and forth with this really worried look on her face. And it's a reminder how perfect these girls have to be picked by these commanders. So when Hannah gets out of the car, Daisy's with her, and Paula sticks her finger in her mouth. She examines it and says, Thank the Lord that Dr. Grove does beautiful work. And then Paula looks at Hannah and she says to her, I blame your mother for this. She gave you weak teeth, didn't she? And Hannah looks questioningly and says, Tabitha, with a question mark. Paula says, No, it's not your fault you come from weak genes. That's where your rebellious streak comes from. When Paula turns around and goes back inside the house, this gives Daisy and Hannah a chance to talk while they're alone. Daisy uses her sense of humor to say that Paula has a weak chin and she can't fix that. And it causes them to connect a little bit. But then she asks Hannah how many mothers has she had. And Hannah says one. But Daisy pushes back by saying Paula mentioned a birth mother. And Hannah, in my view, has a strong reaction at the mention of her birth mother. And she says that it's rude to talk about it. And that reminded me immediately to when the Mexican delegation was in Gilead in Handmaid's Tale. And the woman president asks Offred what is her given name. And the answer that June gives is, we don't use that anymore. So it seems to be an answer that Hannah has, but I really do believe that she remembers her mother. We saw her see her when she was 8 years old. We saw her write her name in the Handmaid's Tale in the wife school. So there's a part of her that remembers. She just does not know that her mother is June Osborne, but I think she remembers her mother to some degree. Daisy confides to Hannah that her mom died too, and so did her birth mother. So, of course, that makes me wonder who is her birth mother. Can't wait to find out who Daisy really is. But this helps her connect with Hannah. And Daisy, on the way home, sees that the florist shop has been raided. She finds out that the florist tried to run when the eyes showed up at the shop, and that they shot her. So Daisy, seeing all of that violence towards the Mayday, resolves that she has to survive and that she's going to do what the girls do. They push that fear down and they keep going. We see Daisy and Hannah both preparing for bed. Daisy is at the Aunt Lydia school, and as usual, she waits for the Pearls to fall asleep. She then sneaks into the bathroom to either carve or create messages for Mayday or listen to the Mayday radio broadcast on the radio that has been smuggled in. So, as she's listening to the broadcast, she starts to panic because abruptly the broadcast loses its connection, and we don't know why. We don't know if it's that Gilead has found them and is attacking them. We don't know. So Daisy starts to panic. See Hannah at home. She's changing for bed, and she notices that night undershirt that we saw earlier in the episode is disheveled. And she's realizing that someone has disturbed that shirt. And she knows that it's Dr. Grove. She knows that the dentist abused her, violated her while she had her dental work done and he had knocked her out. So she is also in a state of panic as she realizes what he's done to her. And both girls are facing very traumatic circumstances at the very same moment, just in two different locations. And I as disgusted as I am with Dr. Grove, I mean, the reality is that child abuse, SA, is considered normal in Gilead. The only difference is that the commanders can do it when they are sanctioned to do so by the state. But the abuse of women and girls is commonplace, it's normal in Gilead. So feeling angry over Grove is, to me, just as infuriating as it is with the commanders. So I'm looking forward to see what happens going forward. I am looking forward to episode 5, and then hopefully you and I can get to speak again. Take care.